Chapter 8 of Wayside School, the new book, The Cloud of Doom. Just to remind you what the cover looks like. There's that cloud of doom on the top of the school, 30 stories high. We are on chapter 8 called Science. Looks like they're on a rope going into something. All right. 29 hands were raised. There were only 28 kids in Mrs. Jules's class, but Joy stretched both of her arms high in the air. She figured it doubled her chance of being chosen. She waved them back and forth and around in circles. Pick me, begged Bibi. Pick me, Mrs. Jules, urged Calvin, sitting next to Bibi. Sorry, Calvin, you're too heavy, said Mrs. Jules. And your toes are too tiny, Bibi. Todd sat behind Joy, but Mrs. Jules couldn't see him behind Joy's helicopter arms. Okay, Joy, said Mrs. Jules. Everyone else groaned. Joy was all smiles. You lose, losers, she said as she headed towards the door. This week, for science, they would be studying clouds. Luckily, Mrs. Jules's class was on the 30th floor. It was the classroom closest to the sky. Last week, they studied dirt. That wasn't so lucky. By the time they made it down to the ground, science was over and they had to return around and trudge back up. Everyone brought their science notebooks and gathered just outside the door, by the closet that wasn't there. Mrs. Jules put her hands around Joy's waist. Alley-oop, she called, and lifted Joy straight up. Joy giggled. This was why Mrs. Jules hadn't chosen Calvin. He was too heavy for her to lift. Mrs. Jules set Joy on top of the closet. Just above her, a trap door led to the roof. Joy stood on her tippy toes and pushed it open. This was why Mrs. Jules hadn't chosen Bibi. Her toes weren't long enough. A rope ladder tumbled down. One by one, the children climbed the rope ladder to the roof. Be sure to stay away from the edge, Mrs. Jules called up to them. There was a safety railing around the edge, but it was for taller people. Mrs. Jules was afraid for her students could slip right under it. She was the last one up through the trap door. When she reached the roof, she saw everyone standing at the edge. It's like my mantra, no one listens to me. What did I just say? She demanded. Everyone stared blankly at her. Alley-oop, beep, asked Damien. Well, at least somebody was paying attention, said Mrs. Jules. She told everyone to take 2 steps back and sit on their bottoms. But then we'll be farther away from the clouds, Mac complained. Sometimes safety is more important, said Mrs. Jules. She pointed out the clouds to her class. That out there is a cumulus cloud. Some of the students wrote it down in their notebooks. Bibi drew a picture of a sleeping giant. The cumulus cloud was his pillow. Bibi likes to draw. And that's a cirrus cloud over there, said Mrs. Jules. Bibi drew a picture of flying angels. Hundreds of white feathers had fallen from their wings and had swirled into a cloud. Bibi could draw really fast. What kind of cloud is that one, Mrs. Jules asked Benjamin. He was pointing at a dull, dark cloud way off in the distance. Mrs. Jules gasped. If Bibi were to draw it, her picture would look exactly like the inside of a vacuum cleaner bag while the vacuum was still on. But Bibi had never seen the inside of a vacuum cleaner bag while the vacuum was still on, so she couldn't draw it. Everyone back in the classroom, Mrs. Jules shouted. Double quick. The children scrambled to the trapdoor. Hurry, ordered Mrs. Jules. Some fell right through, others got rope burns. Mrs. Jules didn't worry about the little things like that. She was the last one through the hatch. Sitting atop the closet that wasn't there, she tossed the ladder back on the roof and locked the trapdoor. She climbed down, stepping onto the chains in the steel bar. The children were waiting quietly inside the classroom, hands folded on their desks. Mrs. Jules walked to the side of the room and looked out the window. Either the cloud was moving closer or it was getting bigger, or both. What kind of cloud is that, Mrs. Jules asked Leslie. There were times when adults hide the truth from children so as not to worry them, but Mrs. Jules was a teacher and this was science. Take a good look, boys and girls, she said, pointing out the window. Then, with a slight tremble in her voice, she said, that is a cloud of doom. The room darkened. All right, so we finally got to the cloud that's going to hang over Wayside School. It's getting interesting. Have a good day.